Jane, coming to you, once expats have sold their UK property, if they are not planning on using the proceeds to invest in another property, what are some of the alternative investment options that may be open to them?
So there's a few options available to people, and largely it tends to tie in with whatever their plans are for the future, for the funds, and their main objectives for them. Obviously, it's quite tempting at the moment to consider cash because, as we know, with inflation having risen recently, interest rates have also risen quite substantially. So it's very tempting for people to say, well, it's easy now for me to just dump that money into a savings account and perhaps achieve the best rate possible. Where the funds are not are going to be required in the fairly short term, that's a great option, and you should be able to actually achieve a slightly better rate than possibly what you might have been able to access a couple of years ago. However, for expats at the moment, it's quite a challenging arena, largely because at the moment you have a lot of financial institutions, particularly banks, that are almost on the point of exiting people who have bank accounts in the UK. So if somebody's sold a property and the funds have been transferred into their UK bank account in sterling, notwithstanding obviously some of the advice with regard to the foreign exchange, if they're moving it to a different currency or into the country in which they're living, actually obtaining a new product, such as a savings account deposit, maybe a fixed rate for a year or something like that, may not be available to people as expats. So that's something just to really bear in mind, because it's not always the easiest thing to access. So it's a case of possibly, if they're going to maintain in cash, to shop around to see what's available. In many cases, to speak to their existing bank because they're already customers there, and there's a higher potential for that bank to say, well, look, we can offer you a fixed term deposit. Aside from that, of course, things like the tax-frees, which are available to UK residents, such as ISAs, as we know, aren't available to expats. However, they are able to look at alternative investment options in different countries and offshore to further their funds. So that's where we can help. And we offer a planning service or just a general chat to look at their options and to give some ideas as to what they want to do with their funds. What we would examine and have a chat to them about in that case is to sort of see what their real preferences are. So we would undertake a general conversation really to give some ideas based on a number of different things, such as investment preferences, the kind of thing that they might want to invest into. Some people these days are very much attuned to the what we call the ESG, the ethical investment sort of arena. Risk obviously is something that we would assess through speaking to people at length, and also tolerance for their risk, to see the kind of things that are available to them. In terms of what they want for their funds, do they want this money to replace an income perhaps that they may have been generating from actually having rented the property out? If they've had a mortgage on it and they're no longer paying that mortgage, that potentially will free up some of the cash that they have been generating. They'll have capital now. Do they want to try and replace that income in a safe and secure way? In which case you might look at alternative investments that will link into sort of less risky areas for their funds to obviously generate the kind of returns that they might need, or at least partially do so. Government gilts, as they're known in the UK, or government securities, were always available through the post office in the UK. That's no longer the case. It's the Debt Management Office, and they largely tend to be directly accessible for brokers and fund managers, as opposed to non-resident individuals. So that's quite hard to access at the moment. Whether that will change in the future, we don't quite know, but they're not as easily available as they used to be. So they were a great way of actually trying to secure a very good, decent fixed rate, or coupon as it was known. And obviously those sort of rates have gone up too because of recent interest rate rises. But in general, what we would talk to people about is to have a look at the different ideas that they want their funds to achieve. Do they want growth from the money? Do they want to park it? Do they want to, just let it sit there and try and earn some money? Have they got any long-term plans for it, or part of it? because obviously it's not just about all of the proceeds. Sometimes it's, if they're first time investors, for example, they might just want to, as we say, dip a toe in the water and literally just say, well, okay, I accept that potentially, if you look back over 5-year periods going back for years and years, in general, you will find investments will outweigh the returns from cash deposits. So perhaps to have a think about whether they want to sort of dip that toe in the water. Specifically for those overseas, there's things like global investment accounts, which are offered, and that's a platform type of service whereby any funds are held on the platform in an account in the client's name, which literally, offers up to about 5,000 to 7,000 different funds and that kind of thing for investment. They need to consider the tax implications in their resident country. Having dealt with the tax in the UK, as Jamie was talking about, and also reporting in their own country, any investments options that they consider and look to, we can also help with making sure that they specifically relate to the country in which they're resident and are conducive to their tax laws there. But in general, if you have a country that enables somebody to invest overseas, offshore, they will then just report into that country as appropriate and pay accordingly. If they decide to move into their own currency as well, some of the investment options that we offer are available in some of the major currencies. So Hong Kong dollars, US dollars, euros, that kind of currency as well. So that's also something that's available. So sometimes people have different objectives, parts of their money. So they might want to have a part of their currency account in sterling and maybe in Europe if they work in euros. So that's something that's also available to them. So there's lots and lots of different options. And really it's a case of chatting those through with people, which is our initial consultation that we do, to get a flavour for how they feel about that sort of scenario. And then obviously to sort of explore that a little bit further, if it's something that they want to do, and be more specific about, as I said, their management of funds, their preferences, and what they're looking to do. Do they want the regular income from it, for example, or do they just want to make ad hoc withdrawals in line with their changing financial circumstances? We do that through the consultation, through many inquiries via the Expert for Expats website, and any initial consultation is free and without obligation. So, hopefully we'll hear from people in the future. And we do have some overlap with some of the other conversations that have gone past in this presentation, because obviously we have knowledge of the taxation aspect and that kind of thing.